Question: what are you a fan of? Is it a movie, a book, a TV show, a music group, a sports team, or maybe something less conventional? I'm Regan.
And I'm Christian. We've spent over 10 years working in the customer service and entertainment industries. It's this experience which leads us to believe that everyone has a compelling, personal connection to the things that they are a fan of.
And we're here to uncover the secret fandoms of the Gulf Coast's VIPs. Join us as we talk with passionate fans about what they love. On this episode of Fantastic People,
Batman Forever was like my favorite movie out of all of the Batman movies that I had watched at the time. And there was one summer when I was like, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 or something like that, where I watched Batman Forever every single day for the entire summer. And I made my brother watch it with me. And I made him play Batman and Robin with me. And I wanted to be Robin because I was the younger brother. Everyone always says, oh, no one wants to be Robin. Well, I want to be Robin. Thank you very much. I loved Chris O'Donnell. And that was a bonding experience for us, too, because, I mean, that obviously brought us together. I mean, being able to play with my big brother and knowing now that he was definitely sacrificing for me, because no one wants to watch Batman Forever 60 times in a row unless you're a naive 6-year-old.
we are joined by Jacob Craig. Jacob is a comedian from Van Cleve, Mississippi, and the host of the Open Micers podcast, which received the 2020's Most Comedic Podcast on Earth Award from the Hollywood Digest. On Open Micers, Jacob has interviewed famed guests such as Brian O'Halloran from Clerks, Corin Nimmick from Stargate and Supernatural, and James C. Leary from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Jacob shares with us how watching a Batman movie every day one summer created a bonding moment for him and his older brother. This episode of Fantastic People is sponsored by Hellcat Hangar in Pensacola, Florida. Hellcat Hangar's venture is to build a thriving network of individuals and opportunities centered around the production arts and media. They strive to provide exceptional service as a production studio, valuable insight and education, and to enrich the overall industry across the Gulf Coast. They open their doors as a business, a venue, and as a community event center, but in all manners, their doors are open to cultivate a culture of togetherness. To join the Hellcat Hangar community or reserve a time for your event, you can find them online at hellcathangar.com or call 850-341-7403.
Well, Jacob, thanks for joining us today. What's really special about you being on this podcast is 90% of our guests are Pensacola people, but you do not live in Pensacola.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm still on the Gulf Coast, but I'm over towards the Biloxi, Mississippi area, surrounded completely by trees. So, yeah, nowhere near Pensacola.
Yeah, I've spent some time in that area. I have drum teched at Biloxi High School, and a few other schools in that region, but I have, maybe collectively spent like 3 total weeks there in my near 20 years of living along the Gulf Coast.
I've driven through there a couple times, probably.
Yeah, and I tell people Biloxi because that's just the nearest place to where I live that people know. But I'm like 40 minutes away from Biloxi. Like you've probably never set foot anywhere near the backwoods part of the country that I actually live in.
Yeah, I taught at a real tiny school. I taught drums for like a weekend. I did a clinic in the middle of nowhere, and I have zero memory of where it was, but I remember their rival school is where Brett Favre went to high school.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's, I think Brett Favre, he went to high school in Harrison or Stone County. So that actually is pretty close to where I live, because I live in Van Cleve. So Van Cleve, Ocean Springs, that sort of area. And we are actually rivals with, you familiar?
With Ocean Springs, not Van Cleve. But I have been to Ocean Springs.
Close enough. Van Cleve is technically owned by Ocean Springs because we're not big enough to be a town. So even though we have our own name, we're technically whatever you call it. Ocean Springs is technically over everything in Van Cleve.
Very cool. Very cool. So you're a podcaster like us. We're similar brethren. Can you tell us a little bit about your podcast, what it is, what you guys talk about?
I would love to, man. My podcast is called Open Micers or Open Micers Podcast. There was a previous podcast called Open Micers Podcast that ended, but we are much bigger than they ever were, so you should be able to just find us pretty much anywhere, even though it's the same name. But basically what Open Micers is we started during the pandemic because there was nothing for us to really do as comedians, me and Jason Robbins, who's been on the show before. And so we were just locked down. We didn't have anywhere to perform or anything to do. And the same thing was true for all of the comedians that were local to our Mississippi scene and our region over in New Orleans. And we've had comedians on from y'all's area over in Florida, Pensacola. So we just started the podcast to give comedians a platform to talk and have something to do during the pandemic. And then, of course, it branched out as we've gotten more and more episodes. We've talked to musicians, we've talked to writers, podcasters, we've talked to several celebrities and famous comedians. So yeah, it's really just a podcast by comedians for everybody, pretty much.
Very cool. Very cool. And so how did you get into the comedy game? How did you want to start being like a stand-up comedian and follow that path? Because it's something that I have been curious about doing, but absolutely terrifies me.
Yeah, it's not easy, man. It's not easy. I was lucky enough to just kind of know that I've always wanted to do this. Because for selfish reasons or not, I've just always loved making people laugh in any situation. So And I like the way that makes me feel when I make people laugh too. So I was like 14 years old, just sitting in high school, bored, some punk kid just writing jokes instead of listening to my teachers. And so I leaned more into writing and journalism. I kind of got into that when I was 14 and put the jokes on the back burner. And then when I was 17, a senior in high school, my brother is a musician and he had a friend who wanted comedians at a gig that he was performing at. So he asked me to do it because he knew that I at least wrote jokes, even though I'd never done comedy before. And I got booked and did 10 minutes of comedy, and I met Jason there. He was also booked and made his comedy debut at the same exact venue, the same exact show, 1 minute apart from me. And yeah, the rest is history. I fell into it with purpose, I guess.
That's awesome, man. How long have you been doing it now?
It's 4 years. I'm 21 now.
Wow.
Started when I was 17. I'm about to turn 22 in February, so close to 5 years, but a solid 4.5 years.
Yeah, so you're like Bo Burnham, man, teenager in these adult comedy clubs telling these jokes, stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Bo Burnham, Dave Chappelle started like that. Pete Davidson, where they're all having to do what I did and sneak around people to actually get on stage and perform because you're not allowed in the bar.
Yeah, that there is. You throw out those names. What's cool to me about comedians and the comedy world in general is there's such a reverence for the history of comedy and what people have done and who's come before and what they've done. You being able to just like throw those names out there, it shows to me that you're kind of a student of comedy history as well.
Absolutely. You have to be a student of the game if you want to understand how jokes work, how people get into comedy, how people get successful at comedy. And yeah, I mean, that's 90% of the comedians you'll meet is you'll mention some obscure comic that not everyone walking around the street knows. But some other guy who's an open mic comedian would be like, oh, yeah, I love that guy when I was, blah, 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 this age. I first saw them. So it's an interesting connection, a lot like fandom, where you bring something like that up and, it instantly creates a connection with somebody you've never met before. Yeah,
the closest thing I think I've ever gotten to being a comedian is I like to tell jokes on my Facebook. That's still about the only reason I keep Facebook. Yeah. Ironically enough, I posted a joke recently that I thought was funny, and then somebody commented that like Mitch Hedberg had made the same joke like 25 years ago, and I was like, well, now I feel dumb. And they're like, oh, you should feel a compliment. You thought this was funny, and like one of the greatest comedians ever thought it was funny. Jacob, I'm excited to talk about this topic with you today because it is extremely interesting. We are talking about Batman, and if I'm correct, specifically Batman movies.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited.
So tell me a little bit about your introduction into the Cape Crusader and the Cape and in the format on the big screen.
Yeah, man. It's so like I mentioned earlier, I'm a young man. I'm 21. So I don't have a lot of real world experience in this life, but as far back as I can remember, like as far back as like 3 years old, I would be watching Batman movies, like and specifically Batman the movie, starring Adam West, when I believe that came out 1966.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents were fans of the series because the series was on when they were kids. My parents were born in 1968, so they were watching reruns of Batman the series all the way up until they were teenagers because it was such a big popular phenomenon that they would just show it over and over again on certain channels. And so they introduced the Batman the movie to me, and I just fell in love with the campiness and the comedy of the Adam West Batman. And then, of course, you know, you get older and you discover, oh, that's not really what Batman's about. But that's where it started for me, was starting with Adam West. Before I was even in school, I was learning about the lore behind the Batman mythos and specifically the Batman movies.
Yeah, what was, I don't know if there is a connection here, but you talk about as a guy who's an aspiring comedian, comedy is really at the heart of that film. I mean, that whole Batman 66 version of Batman is very funny. It's very humorous and is very self-aware on kind of the concept of rich dude runs around with teenage boy fighting crime. And do you think in any way that, having that comedy influence at an early age helped, I don't know, put it in your brain that you want to tell jokes and make people laugh because this made you laugh?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, there's obviously a lot of moving parts to that journey.
Of course,
but yeah, I mean, I think that the brand of the humor in that series and in that movie is the fact that you think you know where it's going, you think you can predict what's going to happen, and then it's something just completely random that no one could ever possibly predict. And, that's something that I try to bring to my comedy is I try to lead you down a path that is like, oh, you can predict what I'm saying next. And then I say something just completely random and ridiculous that no one would ever be able to predict. So, yeah, I mean, I think maybe that did influence me in a way.
Yeah, I mean, that is so true of that version of Batman. There's so many just random things that are said and done, and the only person who could anticipate it coming is Adam West's Batman. Nothing shocks that guy, but everything is just pulled out of a hat. Holy halibut, Batman. And it's so random, but never takes him by surprise. It's really great. I think it's pretty underrated, and I don't believe we get enough exposure of that version of the character enough anymore. But it's truly, I think, a gem in its own right. What about some of the other adaptations of Batman as we've gone through the years?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was a kid, obviously the Val Kilmer and Michael Keaton and George Clooney Batman all came out before I was born. So I was lucky enough to be able to grow up with all of those films firmly on DVD because DVDs were still a thing back when I was a kid. And so we would just wear out all of those DVDs of all the Batman movies. So, I mean, I would grow up mainly Val Kilmer because Batman Forever was my favorite movie out of all of the Batman movies that I had watched at the time. And there was one summer when I was maybe 6 or 7 or something like that, where I watched Batman Forever every single day for the entire summer. And I made my brother watch it with me. And I made him play Batman and Robin with me. And I wanted to be Robin because I was the younger brother. Everyone always says, oh, no one wants to be Robin. Well, I want to be Robin. Thank you very much. I love Chris O'Donnell. And and that was a bonding experience for us too. Because I mean, that obviously brought us together. I mean, being able to play with my big brother and knowing now that he was definitely sacrificing for me, because no one wants to watch Batman Forever 60 times in a row unless you're a naive 6-year-old.
Isn't it in the title? Batman Forever?
That's
there
true.
You go.
I am a comedian. I'm sorry. That's not the one with Batgirl, right?
No, that's Batman and
Return?
That's Batman and Robin with Alicia Silverstone. and the bat nipples.
The bat nipples.
That's the one that sticks out the most to me.
That one has Arnold Schwarzenegger and it has Mr. Freeze. This one has Jim Carrey as the Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face.
Yeah.
Replacing Billy D. Williams from the Michael Keaton Batman era.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Great video game, too, by the way.
I didn't play the video game.
It was on, what was that on? Do you know what I'm talking about, Jake? I'm probably not.
No.
You're too young.
I think, it was the SNES.
Yeah, SNES. It was Batman and Robin. It was a hard game. It was good. I'm going to go back and look that up for an emulator.
The controversial opinion here, Batman Forever, not as bad as people make it out to be. And Val Kilmer, pretty good Batman. I don't think he deserves the hate he gets. There's a rumor that there's like a 3-hour director's adult cut of that movie somewhere, and I want to see it.
We are about to burn out on extended director cuts.
So here's the thing. Here's the problem.
I can't.
We're going off on a tangent here for just a second. We gave one to Zack Snyder. You can't tell anybody no after that.
No.
If you tell that guy yes, you got to tell everybody else yes.
I don't need it. If it was cut, it was cut. Like, there's a reason it was cut.
Oh, I agree with you. I'm just saying, once you say, I walk into an office and be like, I want a director's cut. And they'd be like, who are you? I'm like, you gave one to Zack Snyder. And they're like, you're right. Okay. Did you make that movie? No, I didn't, but I have my own cut.
But I know they made one.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I see it coming, and probably especially with these superhero movies, because there's so much content to put into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Again, it's not even because of Val Kilmer or the rest of that cast. It's because of Joel Schumacher. I can't see how that guy made a director's cut of anything. He put nipples on the bat suit.
Rest in peace, Joel Schumacher. Hopefully that won't be his entire legacy.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I mean, I am a good bit older than you. I saw most of these movies in the not 66, but the original run of Batman films. Batman the movie starring Michael Keaton came out in 1989, was the year I was born. So that one I did not. But
you watched it on TBS a lot, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, hundreds of times. But I definitely Forever and Batman and Robin. I saw in theaters. Yeah. What about the more darker, realistic Nolan films? How do you fall on those?
Yeah, those were some of my favorite movies growing up, which is probably why I'm so messed up right now. Because I mean, Batman Begins came out when I was 5 years old, and I watched it when it came out when I was 5 years old.
Yeah, that's not good parenting, bro.
No, it's not good parenting. I won't claim that it is, but it is good filmmaking. So maybe my parents knew something.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I would rock to some Batman Begins when it first came out, and of course I didn't understand it. It's just I would have nightmares about Scarecrow. But I love it. As I got older, I definitely watched them all over and over. And Batman, The Dark Knight Rises, I was lucky enough to go see in theaters because that came out when I was 12. So I was old enough to actually watch and understand Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, watch those on a loop, and then go see The Dark Knight Rises opening weekend.
This makes me feel so old.
Yeah. This is the first time this has happened to me. Those are good. I always say those are good movies. I believe you have a different opinion, Christian, but I really enjoyed them. I loved the take on Batman there. My favorite thing to make fun of, though, the worst part about those movies is that Batman has to talk like this.
Yeah.
Look, let me drop some knowledge on you guys, though. Let me drop some knowledge that you might not know.
Go for it.
So in Batman Begins, there is a deleted scene where it shows Batman developing a voice modulator.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Christian Bale's doing that with his real voice, supposedly, I don't know if they cut it out because that's not canon that he uses a voice modulator or not. But in Batman Begins, it does show him developing a voice modulator to cause that effect on his voice.
That would have been so much better.
That's interesting. That is interesting.
But, I mean, knowing he's just talking like this.
I'm Batman.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's very easy to make fun of.
I love to do the voice in a funny way, but
I actually think the Bat voice is kind of iconic at this point. I think it's great. My problem with those films are, I think it's a great billionaire vigilante movie.
It doesn't have to be Batman.
It doesn't have to be Batman. There's nothing about it, like He's not the detective. He's definitely not the smartest guy in the room for majority of those films.
That's a good point.
And whatever. They're fine. They're good. I don't think they're quite as good as everyone makes them out to be. But I also think when people complain about them, they over exaggerate. Like the Batman voice doesn't bother me. Dark Knight Rises, people say it's a terrible film. I disagree. I think it's a lot of fun. Anything Bane says is just hilarious.
Yeah.
That's something that you should make fun of is Tom Hardy's Sean Connery Bane impression.
I think Tom Hardy I would say he was having the time of his life, and then he made Venom. So that's the time of his life. But
not that great of a movie.
But I personally think those movies are, again, better than people give them credit for, but also worse than people give them credit for. So I do want to ask, does this love of Batman, does it spread into, animated stuff? Does it spread into comics, video games? Where else do you take this Batman fandom?
Yeah, I mean, I soak up everything, man. Like, I started collecting comic books when I was in high school, and the comic books that I started with were runs of Batman. And Batman Rebirth, or the DC Rebirth, was big around this time when I was maybe a sophomore or junior in high school. So I had actually collected up to a point all of the Batman Beyond Rebirth comics, all of the Detective Comics Rebirth comics, all of the Batman Rebirth comics. So yeah, I mean, I would soak up as many comics as I could afford. Obviously, the original Batman animated series is just one of the best television series ever made. I think a lot of people will agree with that at this point. And yeah, the Arkham games are just fantastic. Yeah, I soak up everything Batman that I can.
Yeah, I am. Gosh, I keep hitting this.
Yeah, we both do.
For me, I'm a comics guy. I'm more of a Marvel guy than DC, truthfully. And while I love the Batman character, I don't know that I have a few like Justice League comics and stuff like that I've read through the years, but Batman's a character for me that I don't know. Like, I love the character, but it's that love has never moved me into the reading medium. Like, I love Batman the animated series. I love Under the Red Hood. I think that's a great animated adaptation. And I love the movies. I have like just a soft spot for pretty much every film adaptation of Batman. I pretty much will sit down and watch anytime it's on TV. I can't tell you why I never really moved into comics for it, but it is a powerful character. His influence, it's worldwide and it's multi-generational, and it appeals to a lot of people, even though it's a orphan billionaire vigilante, super genius. But that idea of loss and pain and suffering and loneliness is universal. We all connect to those things. And I would be sad to live in a world without Batman.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what it is that makes everyone connect to it, because, everybody has lost somebody. Everybody can relate to that feeling and that drive that makes Batman, even though none of us are ever going to be able to be Batman, aside from like, I don't know.
I mean, Jeff
Bezos probably could be if he wanted.
Definitely.
He just decided to go to space instead.
Yeah, I would probably see Elon Musk being Batman first.
Both of them decided to go to space first, I think, really. I mean, Elon didn't go, but he's built spaceships for a decade that could do it. I mean, so what has kept you coming back to the character, to all the different iterations? What are some things that have stayed true and keep you coming back to the character of Batman?
Well, I think what keeps me coming back personally that a lot of other Batman fans really don't like is the fact that nothing stays true. The fact that every single movie that you watch that involves Batman changes. I mean, the whether it's different directors that want to go in different directions, whether it's different actors playing Batman, different storylines. I mean, the character has been around for so long, and there's so much media and there's so many comic books involving this character that we're lucky enough to where it's not like Superman, where if you take away Superman's core values, farm boy from Kansas, truth, liberty, justice, then it's not really Superman anymore. Mm-hmm. But you can take away pretty much anything from Batman and people will still be like, oh yeah, that's Batman. Because there's so many different versions. There's versions where he has his code he'll never kill. There's versions like in Michael Keaton's Batman where he literally blows up clowns. I mean, every different version of the movies that we get is so far evolved from the last movie that we had that I'm personally just interested to see what this director is going to do, what this actor is going to do, what villains are they going to bring to the screen. And, not everybody's going to be happy with all of the changes, but I personally try to embrace them as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, and that's an important thing as just a fan of anything. When there are different iterations or versions of something, it's okay to not like it.
Mm-hmm.
But what you should do is recognize you have a version you do like, and that's for you. So if you don't like Batfleck, right?
You beat me to it.
But you like Christian Bale, well, guess what? Just because Ben Affleck played Batman for 2 movies or 3, I've lost count. Yeah. You still can watch the Dark Knight trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you still have those films. It doesn't erase from it. So being able to pick and choose and say what you like and don't like is a very mature way to handle the things that we love.
I think that Batman is unique in the DC verse as a part of the DC verse. And what's special about it is that it's a lot like James Bond in that the baton keeps getting passed. Now, it's different because it's not the same. Like, you're not supposed to watch it and go, oh, it's the same. It's where we left off.
Yeah,
right? Like, the story changes. It's a reboot. James Bond has really never been a reboot. It's kind of like it's the same character that's followed all the way through these generations. Like, the story and everything connects, but just a different actor, right? Whereas with Batman, you kind of reboot it a couple of times. But what I think special about that is we've rebooted Spider-Man a few times. I absolutely hate that, right? Like, we don't need another reboot of Spider-Man. If they were to give me, which it sounds like maybe with the Robert Pattinson, if that ever happins, we're going to get another reboot. But that's okay because I like seeing a different actor in the suit and in the role and what they bring to it. And maybe it's the speed in which we get a new Batman. Like, it's not that frequent. And it's always with a different purpose and iteration behind it. Whereas with Spider-Man, it was like this weird, oops, that failed. That sucked. Let's try again. Whereas each version of Batman as its own is really good and enjoyable to the subset of fans that like it. And to your point, Christian, yeah, I don't like Batfleck. I am doing a pretty good job forgetting that it's a thing. But I'm okay with that. Like, I respect that other people like it and that it stands for its own space, right? I don't like the 60s version of Batman, but it's got a huge following and an appreciation. And my point there is that it's unique and it's special that this character has carried through generations, and different people have handled it differently.
Almost 100 years.
In a very great way. Much like James Bond. James Bond has transcended generations at this point and continues to offer something special. And each actor offers something special to the character that we get to enjoy. And not everybody loves James Bond either, but they're all good in their own way.
Hashtag Roger Moore. I do like Batfleck. I don't really like the movies he's in, but I think he's great as Batman. What?
He's already played. Look,
hold your mouth. You are not the guest of this podcast.
I'm just saying, he was already Daredevil. He was already the billionaire vigilante. Like, we don't need him to do too much.
He also played the actor who played Superman in Hollywoodland, so he's
George Reeves.
3 superheroes on screen.
He's a better director than his.
Do you have, Jacob, a favorite? We talked about the 60s Batman and you talked about Val Kilmer, but do you have a specific actor, maybe separate from film or story, that you think really nailed the character?
Ooh, let's see. I think that's the beauty of it. I don't know if anyone's really nailed the character yet.
I agree with that. I think they've nailed aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's every actor has been able to do something to that character very extremely well. But the character itself changes so much that there's never going to be one actor that you're like, oh, this is Batman. This guy nailed every single aspect.
So I guess the better question is, which is your favorite?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I think if you ask anyone that question, it's going to be the Batman that they grew up with.
Yes.
I would say Christian Bale. He was my Batman. That was the Batman while I was growing up. I saw The Dark Knight Rises in theaters. You talk to somebody who grew up in the 80s, they're going to say Michael Keaton. You talk to my parents, they're going to say Adam West. You talk to my brother, who was born in 1992, he's going to say George Clooney. He's wrong, but that's what he's going to say.
Oof.
I'm Michael Keaton. I'm very excited he's coming back to the role for the Flash movie. I mean, though, to be fair, I love Michael Keaton in everything.
Michael Keaton can do no wrong. That guy is one of the best living actors that we have.
So I'm going to present a challenge to myself to go back and watch them all before this episode releases.
Oh, okay.
So if you're listening, DM me on Facebook.
Wait, are you talking about Batman 66? Or are you going to start at Batman 89 and go through like Zack Snyder's Justice League? Or
no, I'm not doing that. I'm not probably
not going to do BVS either.
No. I'll whatever I can get access to.
What if you just did? You just did the one Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, one Christian Bale, one Bat. What?
No, that's not fun.
You can expose yourself to all.
I'm a completionist. I'm saying I'll go back to this. There's a movie in '66.
Yeah, so there's a short TV run, and then there is a movie
off of it. I'll do the movie. I'll do the movie run of all of them up until I'll give Ben Affleck one.
Do Batman vs Superman. Do VPS. Do where the director's cut is better.
Okay. Anyway, my point is I'm going to give myself a challenge to go back because here I've watched over my life. I've watched them all except for Batfleck in some. I've seen some of his stuff in some capacity, whether it be on TV and like
whoa,
marathon.
You've never watched a Batfleck movie? You've just determined you don't like it.
I've not watched a Batfleck movie. I've watched a movie that Batfleck was in.
Suicide Squad?
No. What was the Superman? It wasn't Batman vs Superman. It was
That's the one he's in.
The Justice League movie.
Okay, well, that movie's stupid.
I didn't finish that movie either.
Oh my gosh. You have no right to talk.
I didn't finish it because of how bad it was. Anyway, my point. This is a trailing podcast. I'm gonna present a challenge to myself to go back and watch them and change my answer. I'm gonna give an answer when we post about this episode.
Oh, okay. So you're not giving an answer right now.
Well, I'm gonna give one, but it's gonna change probably.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because what I would usually say is Christian Bale. That's not what I grew up on, but I really liked those movies. However, at the time, the way I viewed movies and my perception of movies and a good story and good quality cinema was just different. I was a very specific type of teenager that just did not have a good world view, like a very wide world view and perspective and growth. So now that I've grown a lot and I go back and watch movies, I appreciate things so much more and so much differently that I think if I were to watch all of them in the next couple of weeks, I would have a different opinion.
Well, I can't wait to hear.
And so it may be the same, but I'm going to try my best to objectively view them all and then pick a favorite.
Fantastic fans, you heard it here first.
Yeah. Somebody DM me and ask me if I don't post about it. And if I haven't watched all of the movies, then I'll do my best to catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it does kind of bring me to follow on because we talk about Batman in different iterations and you say you follow it in different mediums. What has been, outside of just filmmaking, what has been your favorite iteration of Batman?
Well, you have to give a shout out to Batman, the animated series, right? Kevin Conroy was just a voice of a lot of people's childhoods, even though, well, technically at this point, he did play Batman in the CW shows. If you want to count that, he played a version of Batman. But for the most part, he never really played Batman live action. But you talk to a lot of people and they'll say, oh, Kevin Conroy's my Batman, even though he's only been a voice of Batman because he provided such a good portrayal of that character in the animated series and all the animated movies. His voice is just so sultry. He is the perfect voice for Batman. And of course, the Arkham games as well. Kevin Conroy voices Batman in all the Arkham games. All except one, maybe. I think Troy Baker might voice Batman in one of those games. But yeah, Kevin Conroy is just pretty much anything he does embodies a good chunk of who Batman is.
Yeah, I agree. That is Batman the Animated Series is a masterpiece in both Batman and in animation storytelling in general. And one big reason for that is the voice casting. Kevin Conroy is phenomenal as Batman. So we always end the podcast the same way. We ask the same two questions. The first is, what is some constructive criticism that you have for maybe Batman fandom or, Batman in cinema? What do you want to see? What do you think we could have done better?
Yeah, so constructive criticism for the fandom, like I said earlier, is you can't expect too much and still expect to be happy. Like, you have to understand that this movie coming out in 2022 with Robert Pattinson as Batman, there's going to be something you don't like about it. There's going to be something you look at it and you say, that's not Batman. And you're going to have to understand that you're the one in the wrong because it's in a Batman movie. So therefore it is Batman. So I would say, and it's a lot like Star Wars fans in a way. All the new Star Wars movies come out and they're like, oh, well, that's not Luke Skywalker, that's not Princess Leia. Well, it is, because they're doing it in the movie.
That's a great point.
So I would say look at yourself, open your mind, and expect that you're not going to be happy about everything, because there's so much lore behind Batman that you're never going to have all the villains that you want in the movie. You're never going to have, the supporting characters you want in the movie. You're probably not going to have the actor you want playing Batman in the movie. But if you just open your mind and go into it like you've never seen a Batman movie before, you'll probably be happier than if you went into it with extremely high expectations.
Yeah, no, that's good. And like we said, it kind of applies across fandoms, accepting that you're not in control of the project and that there are going to be things. Yeah, you look at Batman, you're like, that looks an awful lot like Cedric Diggory. And you're right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to say on that note is I'm tired of British people playing American superheroes. You got friggin' Henry Cavill. We've got Robert Pattinson, Christian Bale, Tom Holland, and Andrew Garfield. Let's get some Americans. Either that or give me an American James Bond or Doctor Who. Let's make this even.
Yeah, I don't know.
We got Robert Downey as Sherlock. That's the only exception. Maybe British people are just better actors.
You have to admit they do it so well. They do it so well, though.
That's true. That's true. I love Henry Cavill as Superman.
That's the first time you've said something more offensive than me on an episode.
How is it offensive? We have it's a fact. British people play American superheroes all the time, and
It's still a little tasteless.
maybe I just want to see Brad Pitt as older Batman. I don't know.
Nobody wants that.
I don't think anyone wants that. I have to agree with Regan there. No one wants to see old Brad Pitt Batman.
I was just throwing out the first name that popped in
That's
my
the first name that popped in your head.
Hey, man, I like Brad Pitt. He's a cool guy. What does the future hold? What do you see coming for the next 5 to 10 years for this property and this character?
Yeah, so the future is really exciting right now. Like, this is the best time to be a Batman fan, because I know a lot of this isn't exactly confirmed yet, but right now we have the distinct possibility that we're going to have Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton, and Robert Pattinson all playing Batman at the same time.
All next year. They will all be Batman next year. Yeah.
Supposedly rumored. I know official. Of course, Robert Pattinson will be, and Michael Keaton will be, because there's pictures of him on set. Ben Affleck may or may not be. I don't know if he's confirmed for the Flashpoint movie or not. But it's very exciting to see these three super different Batman movies, or these three super different Batman portrayals, and two very distinctly different movies where, moving forward, we could have a Ben Affleck solo Batman movie, a Robert Pattinson trilogy, and a Michael Keaton Batman inside the DC multiverse. Like, that is so exciting. This is the best time to be a Batman fan. Like, I'm so excited to see all of these Batmen all at the same time and seeing just how different they are and which Batman's going to be someone's favorite. And kids growing up at this time, who are they going to say their favorite Batman is? They have Michael Keaton, Robert Pattinson, and Ben Affleck all at the same time. They're going to have to think for themselves. I was brainwashed into Christian Bale. They're going to have to think like, oh my God, this Robert Pattinson Batman is the best so far. So I'm really excited for like the next generation of fans coming up to be able to look at everything that's happening right now and essentially take in like what could possibly be the golden age of this character.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I never thought of it the way about, certainly you're right. Whoever is the one we're basically introduced to is our favorite, but imagine in 12 months, you're introduced to 3 different versions of it. Like, really thinking about which one could be the best. I think that's a great point. The one thing, my one hope and aspiration, if Hollywood cared at all about my opinions, is you make a Batman Beyond movie with Michael Keaton as older Bruce Wayne.
That would be fantastic.
I think he would kill that part. I love that character. Terry McGinnis is great. Batman Beyond is such a cool world. I think Michael Keaton would do a great job.
And I think Batman Beyond is a great direction to go with the movies now. It's a great great time to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a good concept.
Yeah. He looks the part too. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's time. It's time.
Yeah.
Like, he's ready.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to make a lot of money because what people want, people have been
Also true.
screaming for Batman Beyond for years, and people want Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne in a solo movie. So, that's a good way to make some cash.
Well, this has been a fun topic, I think, for all of us. Obviously, Regan and I went on a few tangents. Oops.
That's when you know it's good.
Yeah, we appreciate you hanging out with us. What you got going on? We've talked about open micers a little bit, but if you want to talk about, give us a pitch and where to find it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's the main thing that I've been promoting right now because I have stand-up dates. I think all of them will probably be passed by the time this episode comes out. But Open Micers Podcast, anytime, anywhere, on your way to work, on your way home. We are on everything, and you can listen to us talk to famous comedians, Brian O'Halloran from Clerks, Corin Nemec from Stargate and Supernatural, or you can hear us talk to Regan and Christian September 1st.
Yep.
That's going to come out first, but by the time you're listening to this, go over to Open Micers, listen to the Fantastic People episode. And yeah, that's what we're trying to do, man. We're trying to use our platform to promote local creators, and selfishly, we're trying to talk to celebrities because that's super cool, and we're able to do that. So throw us a listen on Spotify.
That's awesome, man. Well, Jacob, it's been fun, man. I appreciate it.
Hey there. If you're still listening, that means you really enjoy this podcast and don't like missing even a second of it. For that reason, I'm going to tell you how to hear even more. By that, I mean the raw, fully unedited, behind-the-scenes kind of stuff. Go to fantasticpeoplepod.supercast.tech and become a premium member of Fantastic People. The link will be in the show notes. Like I said, by doing that, you'll get the raw, completely unedited cut of every episode, including much of our backlog. In addition, you'll get access to our Discord server where we will host Ask Me Anythings and random fandom chats. But wait, there's more! You'll also get access to our upcoming recording schedule and the ability to submit questions for upcoming guests. Again, that's fantasticpeoplepod.supercast.tech.